these sheets being handed out are different than the ones in the packet?
Yes. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for giving me your time. The packets that you're receiving this evening, okay, are an update of what was handed out today, last week, to the budget subcommittee. And what we have is some updated information, and I'll explain what that's about. The reason for the updated information is that last week, we did not include the cost paid for students who left. That was something that was asked of us. You know, we had to clarify that, as well as the cost for the summer school, which really, even though it's summer school, it's still this fiscal year because it's, you know, it's in July and our year begins July 1st. So that's why these are updated. But the updates also include some of the questions that were, you know, raised by the subcommittee members, and just for clarification, so I'll go through those. But for everyone else that may not have been there that evening, let's just start with just going over the sheets first, okay? So after the yellow sheet, the first packet is the projected cost for the current school year for out-of-district students, okay? And that would be for our transportation, okay? So you have the one there for transportation. It's the one that has all the routes on the right-hand side, okay? All the schools that our students that are out-of-district go to, the days left in the year, the daily rate for the students, and the projected February to June, the cost to date, the total year. One of the questions was, well, you know, you have various runs, and sometimes the cost per student is more for, you know, going to the same location. And the reason for that is the routes. So you see the routes all the way to the right-hand side. In one instance, you'll see that the cost varies because, you know, they may be going, the student may be transported from Southbury to Hamden, but then, of course, if they're transported from Torrington to Torrington, that would be less. The other thing that impacts this cost per student in transportation is that, and I didn't know this last week, I'm sorry, but there's cost sharing that the bus company does, so that, you know, they share the cost. We can share the cost with another district that happens to be sending a student or a few students to the same outplaced location. So we actually are paying less then, so, which is, you know, an advantage for us. So that's why when you look at the daily rates, you see those differences. The other thing that impacts the daily rates are whether or not a student must ride with an aide, or even in some cases with a nurse. In some cases, we have 2 or 3 aides that are assigned to one student. So that impacts that as well. So that's the cost differential there. And you'll see those notes are really specific in the notes section, okay? And, you know, those are the reasons why those things are different, you know, for every student, okay? Yes?
So is the aid cost part of this transportation cost?
The aid cost would be part of the transportation cost, so then that would be why you see like that increase. So let's say, for instance, this first person, ACES Whitney High East. So that's not a good example because that's just one. Let's see.
CCMC.
Yes, CCMC. That's when that was right. We were talking about that one last week. That's a good example. So when you see that it says no aid, and you look across the one run, no aid. There's no aid that's assigned. So usually that cost is going to be less. So it is included, yes. So that's that transportation piece. If we look down, and feel free to ask questions, you know, if you have any. We were looking at, you know, what our projected expenses will be, what we actually budgeted last year for this year, and what the shortage is. So that you have on the table on the left-hand side there. The total projected costs are $1,547,799.74. And what was budgeted was $894,560. The projected shortage is $653,239. And there at the bottom, you see that last year the total cost for the year was $1,247,116. And if you look at DCF costs, the current DCF costs, those are costs that, those are really volatile. We don't really know one way or the other what's going to happen because those placements occur, really, for various reasons, and we have no control, absolutely no control over those placements, and so, the transportation is impacted. That's in the vicinity of $88,000. So that's what it's looking like right now for transportation and here at Torrington in our town. And the second page.
Before you move on.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know if you answered that question, but when you see route Southbury to Hampton, where is that student starting from?
It's a DCF place.
So Southbury, yes.
Well, I mean, that student's already in Torrington?
No, the student lives in Southbury and
Yeah.
is being transported to Hampton.
Right,
But they're next to the,
but we're the, right,
where the district where a family lives.
It's a Torrington student that's placed by DCF in Southbury.
right,
So the van leaves here, drives to Southbury, picks that student up and goes to Hampton
right.
every day.
So the student does live in
Yes,
No,
Well,
the
the-
student lives in Southbury, that's where
Right.
they're placed,
Torrington?
by DCF. The family lives in Torrington.
And what's the cost of that?
$68,544.
Just for the transportation.
Just transportation.
that, the total of the students in that situation, and that's highlighted in kind of the orange color, is $188,000 is estimated, projected for the year.
And if you look between tuition and transportation, $126,000 plus for one child.
The second question is, I forgot, what was the logic in which we not only didn't maintain last year's projected budget, what our costs were last year, 1.247 million, but we actually brought it down. What was our logic for thinking that we were going to?
We wanted to know the same thing, but unfortunately, people that planned the budget last year that did this vote their vote. So we're not sure why it wasn't.
Okay, I don't know.
Thank you. So I know that was one of the pieces that had to be clarified from, last week, but for the folks that, were at the subcommittee, we have a little bit more information so that you can see, if you're interested, on page 2, specifically schools, so you can see what that cost is for the busing for the school year. And cost increase factors from 13-14 school year, so you can see that comparison. For instance, last year we were not billed for busing, but it's not clear as to why that was, but this year we are. In Highlander, if you're really into like digging into the data, last year we have additional students this year. That's on page 3. And so just to get the flavor of, for example, the cost of a nurse and how much that impacts our expenses there. So I know that the subcommittee also had a few questions, and so we tried to clarify with some verbiage regarding out-of-district busing costs. So if you go to the new page 1, I guess. Okay, so it's right after the, let's see, it's the 4th sheet in the packet. Okay, it gives a little bit of an idea, of why some of these costs have increased, and it's a short blurb, but just so that you can get an idea of what kind of things occur to impact, the budget in that way. So you can see, even like if you look at Craig River Street, you know, and you may notice that it's very high, and that's because it's a wheelchair van. You know, I know that, Mr. People had asked about, like, what kind of actual vehicles also we were using too, so we tried to look into that a little bit. Okay. I don't, if you wanted to, you know, ask me any questions about that, that's no problem. We can go on, if you're ready to tuition. Are you ready for tuition? Oh, one last question was, I was asked what the reimbursement was for last year. Right, it was $199,298, right?
For transportation?
But it was our reimbursement, right? Yeah, that, because we get a reimbursement,
What was
so
it over that?
199.
298. Yeah.
Total for tuition and transportation?
No,
For
that's
just for transportation, yeah. So that's the question, and then,
You know,
okay,
1.2 million.
okay, so, so that was a reimbursement question. Okay, so now we can move on to tuitions, and, one of the things is, and when you're comparing the two sheets, the amount of students, not every student that attends a school is, you know, using a van or is transported, so that's why you might see a little bit of a difference, you know, like you might see 7 students on the tuition sheet, but for the same school, you know, it might be, in transportation, 6 students, and that's, you know, it could be that the student left and that notation would be there on the transportation sheet, or it could be that that student perhaps is, you know, does not need our transportation, the parent has chosen to drive them or what have you. So that those numbers don't necessarily have to match student to student on both of the spreadsheets. So if we're looking at tuition, we see what the schools are that our students are attending, and we see how many students are attending. And when you see something, for instance, like ASD, okay, American School for the Deaf, you see total 3 to 2. And what that shows is that we did have 3 students, okay? And you see the little highlight there, one of those students left, so that's why it says 3 to 2. So we had 3 students, and so, you know, now we have 2, and so of course, that's reflected in the total amount. And then, you know, sometimes students start later because they've been placed there at a later date. We have some students that were placed maybe, you know, in January. And when you look at the gray box there with all the total outplaced LEA students, and you go down, our total is 6 million, projected, okay, $6,883,465.52. The amount budgeted for this year was $6,124,679. So in that account, there's a deficit of $763,786. That's the projected shortage for next year. I can repeat that because I know that's not actually on this. Did you want me to repeat it? Okay. So the budgeted amount was $6,124,679. So 6,124,679. And then that means that we have an estimated shortage, or a projected shortage, I should say, of $763,786. 763,786. And then what it will actually cost projected is in the red, 6,883,000. That figure is right there. This handout is about five pages long, and one of the questions that I was asked also last week is, well, where are our regular education students that attend Wamogo, you know, Region 6? And so that's on page 5. I think it was there, but it was kind of hidden. So when you flip over, you see on page 5 that we have 59 students attending Wamogo, and they're regular education, but it's school choice. So that's what they are. Okay, and then trying to see, oh,
On
and then,
Wamogo,
I'm sorry?
it's 10 students?
I'm sorry, where's that?
Wamogo, it's 10 students? or
Wamogo?
10 special ed?
There's 10 special ed,
10
there's 59 regular
Right.
ed. The column, the bold blue line above it
Oh.
is the regular ed at 59 kids.
And there was the question about the magnet schools, right, Mr. Nagy? You had that question before, and that's on page 2, our correct magnet schools, regular ed, 49. That's on page 2.
Now, on this transportation, do we include that in our regular bus transportation for all our students, or?
No, it's a separate line item. You're talking, the regular ed transportation?
Well, I'm talking, when we talk transportation in our budget, we talk,
It's all gonna be broken out,
Yeah.
so you're gonna get a snapshot of what each
Oh,
school or out-of-district location is
this,
costing.
But Oliver Wilkett Technical School and Wamogo are part of regular transportation in town,
Yes.
okay?
yeah, and we just budget.
Yeah, that's part of, regular, because
But these 49 Wamogo students, that's not, that's an additional amount, or that's part of the regular transportation line?
part of regular.
Regular transportation.
Okay, so it's not.
That is separate.
But Wamogo, we prepay for seats for that school, correct? For regular ed?
for regular ed?
Are we
That I don't know.
We prepay for seats, are we occupying all the seats that we're paying for? They're all filled.
And then some.
Well, that's what caused the Regional 7 issue, was that we had more students than Wamogo could handle, and Regional 7 was offering a similar program.
Do we have a similar situation with CGR where we're paying for certain seats, and are we using everything we pay for?
For you, everything, okay. That's for sure.
Yeah, we made an agreement with CJR that we would have 14 seats a year. And that gave us a 15% discount on the cost, which they do renew every year.
So with Wamogo, how many did we reserve, and how many are we over? I see we have 69.
14 over, we have
14 over.
55. And they had asked this year if they could come and, more seats. They could ask for more seats from Torrington Public Schools. And I said, not at this time. But we do have, on their behalf, we do have school choice night at the middle school and any school that, for children who are interested in agricultural program. They're there, they recruit, they invite kids up. We do cooperate there.
So, does anyone have any questions on this at all? Okay, so just moving forward, in terms of the creation of budget, all of this is being used, and we're looking at the last 5 years of expenditures in both areas, and looking at data that I've received of, students that are anticipated to graduate, students that, will be potentially coming in. So we're trying to really kind of hone in really good numbers for the budget for next year, using as much data as we possibly can. But you'll see that, soon enough. Okay. Yes.
My biggest question on all of this is, who actually evaluates the efficiency and the progress of these students? how is it, who actually oversees any one of these children as far as where they're going? Is this an efficient, is this the best choice for any one of these students? Who does it? Is it the superintendent? Is it?
Group of people in their triennial.
But I mean, is it any one that we're in control of?
Oh, we have representation at every PPT for these children. And we get, whenever report cards and information.
There's a lot of dialogue.
Yeah.
Can I, yeah. Even informally, well, there's, the mandated PPTs that, we have 2 out-of-district coordinators and then myself. So we go to, really it's them, they go to the, all the PPTs, the annuals, the triennials, the program reviews, which happen often because of that exact reason that you're bringing up. Really, sometimes the program for the students have to be tweaked because they really aren't exactly where they need to be for that moment, and we get together and we have a PPT, okay, what's working, what's not working, how can we make this better for the student? So we really are on top of that, and the 2 out-of-district coordinators are in the schools all over the state, because these schools are all over the state, every day, and are always in communication and always consulting with me. The directors of the programs and I communicate a lot, in terms of just, like with CJR, I'm always talking, to Jim there, and we're always trying to figure out what the best thing is to do for a student. So it's a lot of it is really the relationships that we have with the schools and communicating with them really well, and then of course the special education piece, the legal piece, the PPT, the whole procedural piece. So they're really looked at, and I'm confident that the 2 out-of-district coordinators that we have, they're really good about communicating with the directors and the teachers. It's a really good system. So, they really are looked at. And then the directors are very good about when they notice that something isn't working for a student, they will call us in. They will call them in. So is that what you meant, like that kind of thing?
I was just wondering,
Yeah.
What type of direct involvement anyone from this district has as far as seeing that this kid is somewhere across the state, what progress the child's making, and is that the most efficient and beneficial?
And there's also surrogate parents for children who are involved with DCF that we work with. But yes, right now, because I'm familiar with one particular student, I'm dealing with her, and she's down in Bethel. But because I was in a different capacity when she started with us, I'm attending, meetings for her. I've been on the phone because she'll be turning 18 and talking to her of what happens, because we want to keep these children in school and want to get them educated. And once they're either released from DCF or they reach the age of 18 and become adults, that they can make the best decision for themselves.
And then the last question again is, is there some way that a district such as Torrington, which has such a large portion of its budget into this one line item, is there ways for us to be rewarded by other government agencies to give a higher proration of these expenditures? Because I know that I've talked to people around the state who talk very highly of how we deal with our special ed students. And it seems like we should be somehow rewarded financially for the dedication. And it's a culture that has always served Torrington prestigiously for how we deal with these children. And just think we should get some additional money for it.
Very few lawsuits.
What's that?
Very few lawsuits.
Okay, so that's how we're rewarded.
Mayor,
One more question. These costs that you have here, these are not net of the excess cost? Are these the gross? cost?
This is exactly, right, this is the cost, what we
To the
charge,
district?
right.
So this is net of the excess cost
So,
reimbursement?
could,
Over the threshold of what it costs to educate a child in
Right.
district. So if you send them out, yeah, if you send them outside, money in excess of what it would cost you to educate them here, that's what you.
is that what you were asking?
Yeah. This is the total tuition?
The total
right?
tuition
Yeah.
cost, right?
This
But
is
we get
gross.
reimbursed by the state, the excess cost portion?
Yes, depending
have that
on the
number?
threshold. No, I don't have
I don't
that.
have it in front of me, I can provide that for you.
We can get
This
that.
is a gross.
Okay, gross.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
January staffing report, my sheet says Danny Joe.
Yeah, I guess that puts me on the spot, lucky me. The reason this is in front of you for informational sharing and discussion is the fact that we added a new column to ours this month for multiple Monday, Friday absences in January. So we were trying to get our hands around how many teachers or paraprofessionals, secretaries, or custodians were out on consistent Mondays and Fridays. And this is the first month for having this part of the information in the report. So you can look through and see, there are a couple people that are coming up as Monday, Friday absences on a routine basis for the month of January. I've asked to see if we can take this report back from August when we start the school year to see if this is a continuational or continuing problem. So there's not a lot we can do with the contract, but if we can bring the information to light, hopefully in future contracts, we can address these types of situations. Any questions, or that's pretty much it? Moving on, Mr. Chair. Like my meetings, expeditious.
All right. Board of Ed, new special and committee meetings, our budget schedule. It's in the board packet. It was vetted at budget. It consists of next Tuesday night, 6 o'clock here, a special full Board of Ed meeting for the superintendent to present her budget. March 3rd, a public hearing at Vogel. March 10th, a public hearing also at Vogel. March 11th, 16th, and 19th would be budget committee meetings at Midgeon Avenue to break down the budget and to tackle the public concerns that come up with the public hearings. On the 23rd, will be a full Board of Ed meeting. The 30th of March will also be a full Board of Ed meeting, both at 6 o'clock here. April 15th, 4 p.m., Hugh Potter has to have his budget to the city, no later than 4 p.m. on April 15th. April 28th, we have the time to be determined. I'm not sure what the time will be for that. But City Hall, Board of Ed, Board of Finance, presentation of our budget to the Board of Finance. There is a 2-week gap between the 30th and the 15th. In case we don't finish by the 30th, we have 2 weeks to put other additional meetings in there to reach a final number. Any questions on it? Other than we will update the time of the Board of Finance meeting.
Yeah, and, I mean, I certainly welcome input as to what would be convenient to the Board of Education. But also on the 28th, it's not only the presentation to the Board of Finance, but we usually have that public hearing also that same
Yes.
evening.
Next week, there are meetings both on the 23rd and the 24th?
Depends on what committees.
On the 23rd, there are
Grievances
Grievances.
Monday night, Tuesday night, this meeting, Wednesday night's expulsions.
but this is strictly dealing with the budget.
No.
This doesn't address any regular board.
No, I'm budget, there's one on the 24th?
There's one on the 24th,
Okay,
Tuesday night, 6 o'clock here at THS.
thank you.
You're welcome. You'll see on this list, it does not include our March 18th regular Board of Ed meeting, because again, these are just budget-related meetings. That 18th meeting will just be a regular meeting, no budget discussion, we'll probably be sick of it by then. We'll need a break. Okay. H. I forget how you worded it. Facility use.
You want to go since we're going to the meeting?
We had a very nice meeting last night with the, I want to get the name right, Torrington Varsity Alumni Club. Yes, established in 1945. Incorporated on March 14th, 1964, very important day in my life. No, I wasn't born. Someone else. Not me either. No. It became apparent last night at the meeting that a lot is evolving with the project that sits behind us. But I have concern, and I voiced it to the superintendent last night, and it's not finished yet. We know it's not finished yet. We have a track season coming up. We know it will not be finished in time for the track season. I don't know if any provisions are being made. The turf committee members that were there last night informed us it won't be done probably till midsummer. So, want to know what provisions are being made, knowing that the throwing event areas will not be ready. The long jump and pole vault areas will also not be ready. Are we making provisions to either eliminate those events? Are we making provisions to move our track meets to a venue that's completed? And there's a lot of discussion about how to use this facility, who should use this facility, how it should be staffed, whether it's vendors, whether it's staffed the way it currently is run through parent committees. And it just led to me to a lot of unanswered questions that we're moving in a direction on something that we don't have yet. And there's a lot of discussions about how it's going to be handled and who's going to do what. And I think everybody, unfortunately, just needs to stop. Let's build it. When it's done, we can use it. I mean, we got a lot of people, you know, jumping in, and it's not finished. I mean, be patient. It's coming. We have to let the grass grow. We have to plant the grass before we can let the grass grow.
Have the snow melts before you plant the grass.
I know. We don't even know what it looks like anymore. We know it's white. That's all we know. We hope it's green and red when it melts.
You said bringing in vendors in place of our athletic parent groups running the concession stand?
There is discussion of that, yes.
Who's discussing that?
Right now, it's what we understand is it's at school level and outside use groups that are talking about using the facility.
Because that does directly have a budget impact on us if because the parent groups that are running the concession stands are providing a substantial amount of money to the athletic budget. I think we should look at that before decisions made of taking that revenue away from the athletic parent groups and giving it to outside vendors.
We don't even have a policy.
Right, we don't have a policy. And that's to me, the mayor and I had a conversation during budget, that was last year, right? We were supposed to be paying attention, but we were having a side conversation. I distracted. But, what's that? Yeah. There was an intent of the board over the last couple of years to try to build some type of self-funding athletic music so that we stop putting it in the budget every year and saying we're gonna chop it, we're gonna this, we're gonna that. And I think that before we look towards outside sources, that we should be looking at ways that the school system can generate revenue, be it either off of food, concessions, tickets, advertising, whatever. I think that that's what the policy's to address. But the impression that I took from last night's meeting was that there's decisions and there's plans being laid at the building level that, quite honestly, I think need to stop until we have a policy as a board as how we want to proceed. And I don't think that arrangements should be made until the board knows that it's finished, that it's safe to use, that it's We know how we want to try to raise money or not raise money, or bill someone or not bill someone, or, till all that gets ironed out, I think we basically need to request that those involved with it, be it the athletic department, the building level administrator, just stop. And wait until, you know, they're more than welcome to come and have input in how it all gets put together, but until it's put together, I think that they should not put the cart before the horse, because if they in turn make an arrangement to hire a vendor for something, but the board has plans on fundraising that same way, it defeats the purpose of the board's actions.
Then we have a piece of sharing cost.
Right, and cost.
CIAC.
Yes.
What are the plans for our spring sports? Are they working to send those out? Are we planning on having them here?
I don't know, that was my first question here, because last night, hearing from the members of the Varsity Alumni Club that are also on the turf committee, that, I mean, realistically, April 1st, they should be able to get to work out there. It should be thawed, it should be dry enough to work, but you have to plant grass. There's a 6-week germination period on grass. So if they plant it on April 1st, which they can't because they have to do the work before that, you won't have a usable stand of grass until the track season's over. So if you go out and do throwing events on a soggy, wet topsoil field with, you know, an intermittent grass structure, you're just gonna destroy it, and then you're gonna have to redo it. Because, you know, shot puts make holes, javelins make holes. Yes? Sure.
Did they already receive approval to use the facility? They already have approval for the use of the facility, right?
Who's that?
The Varsity Alumni Club for this. They did not get an official.
All we did was hold the date for them, because we weren't sure if we requested to find out if it will be even ready or not.
Okay.
And
So-
in our,
No, we're okay.
in our discussion last night, it came to light to them as well, that the throwing areas, and that won't be available, that we have to look at, is there a different possible area to use? So,
So that discussion is still happening with.
yeah, it's going on as we
Yeah,
speak.
yeah. And the only other thing is, you know, when you say you don't have a policy, there is a policy, there's a facility policy use in place. I think you're right, it doesn't take into consideration the intricacies that this turf field presents, but there is a policy in place. So.
Excuse me, I was referring to the policy, the other policy, there isn't a policy on like the advertising and.
Oh, absolutely.
And all that, not the policy on facility.
Facility use, yeah.
Yes.
So, and I agree with you, I mean, you know, that would be a concern for, I think, anybody, you know, obviously, you don't want to put somebody on those field events if they're not ready, you know, and that new grass, it's almost really, you want a year for that grass to really take before you're using it. If they can relocate those field events, that's great. Or eliminate those field events and they'll just have the track events, you know, I just don't
They were
know.
gonna ask around to the schools that had interest, and when they left last night, they were gonna check and see if those, how strongly they felt about the throwing events, and, you know, what the participation in those would be. And then if they had a large participation, then they were gonna get together with Mr. Bissetta and Mr. Bain to look at other options, you know, other field usage, just to stay off that area.
And I mean, I would agree with the board, you know, when it comes to facility use, you know, when outside vendors are brought in, and, you know, I think that is, it does get a little tricky. You know, obviously, you're going to try to maximize the revenue that you can from any event that's, especially an event like that, which I have to say is a tremendous opportunity for, you know, not only the school, but for the city as a whole. But clearly, you want to do it right. You want to step off and do it well, you know, and so.
And that was part of the conversation last night, was, you know, they're in the planning process now, so do they wait 1 year and have, you know, the grand, like, ooh, it's all ready, or do they do a partial? They're, you know, they're gonna banter that back and forth, they said. We also found out at the end of last night, at the last 5 minutes of the meeting, that it has to be a joint meeting.
Yes.
We didn't know that.
Something that I learned after our meeting a few Sundays ago, that CIAC, you know, it's, if it isn't a school sanctioned event,
Right.
you know, you do have to go with CIAC, yeah, so.
But that's something that we as a board haven't even discussed, if we want to get into the invitational market or not, and that just sort of hit us at 6 o'clock, 6:30 last night, that, oh, by the way, what's his name?
Well,
Bohannon.
Paul.
Paul.
Yeah.
I was gonna call him Pat.
Well, I appreciate that the board continues to have that dialogue.
Yeah, he just said, oh, and by the way, I forgot to say this. We teased him a little bit. But it would be for that track invitational, we were talking, that the varsity alumni came forward with, it would have to be a joint venture meet sponsored by the Torrington Public Schools and by the varsity alumni. Not just them.
And if it is a joint event, then the board certainly, or the school can certainly direct and dictate whether outside vendors, you know, would generate more revenue than a parent group may generate.
Well, we also have to have the conversation of costs, profit sharing.
Absolutely.
That was
Yeah, you know.
part of our conversation last night.
Or where will those vendors, I mean, if they're set up in your parking lot, and I'm just
Right.
drawing on the experience from our Main Street Marketplace, you know, do you rent the space out for them to park? Or do you know, take a percentage of their sales? So, I mean, those get to be a little bit tricky.
I guess they reached out, they had said last night that they had reached out to Tim in your office about contacting some of the vendors from the Main Street Marketplace to see if they wanted to vend up here, but.
Note to self, ask Tim what happened. Yeah, all right.
But that's all discussion that has to happen once we have how we want to do it.
Yeah.
It's a whole other conversation, how the board's involved with the event.
What is the time frame for the track being ready? Are we talking next year?
Well, the running track, from what I was told last night, they believe is striped. Is it striped?
Yeah.
It is striped. And the track itself is essentially ready.
Okay.
It's the throwing areas, it's everything north of the chain link fence at the end of the track, where there's a big pile of topsoil on an excavator.
Right, that's would be for the shot put.
Yeah, the throwing
This-
sections.
I have a
But-
question.
I'm sorry, yes?
Is there like any way that you can, because I was on the track team, is there any way that you can have like just the track events here, but have the throwers? Because usually there's a lot of throwers, like one bus could be throwers for outdoor. And like one of the girls that threw made it to national level last year. And that doesn't happen often in Torrington. And she's still gonna be here, so I don't know, like, is there any way you can have throwing somewhere else?
Well, that's what we have to ask the administration to look into that, because not sure how they're scheduling. So that's kind of part of our question, is how are they scheduling the events? You know, last year they moved everything away. I don't know if that's their intent this year or not, or if they're gonna split it to a different area of the field.
That's just a question.
No, thank
Well,
you.
we have Dave here, Dave Bissetta. Is there,
I think he's